So you guys documented that. See, do you have a team here that you have a pretty large office down here?
We do.
They go through and listen and document and check out things, or is it you get a phone call from someone, you should have heard Gunny Bob tonight, and you can go to the archive?
Occasionally we'll get tips, but for the most part, our items are the result of ongoing monitoring by our staff. We've got a total of about 12 people here in our offices in downtown Denver. And one of them, his sole purpose in life, as much as difficult as it is to monitor conservative talk radio. So he will listen every day to hours and hours and hours of shows that we archive.
Yeah.
Local and Front Range at this point. We're not listening to talk radio yet on the Western Slope, but we monitor it in Fort Collins, Greeley, Colorado Springs, in addition to Denver. And he identified these remarks. We then got them out on our website and pushed out to the people who subscribe to our items through our website, coloradomediamatters.org. And that kind of got the ball rolling. There are a number of groups in the progressive community and a number of individuals who found this as irresponsible as we did, and they basically picked the ball up and ran with it. The advocacy group Progress Now organized an action campaign to raise awareness among his advertisers, Newman's advertisers, that he was saying these things.
Is that having an effect so far?
So far, I believe 4 advertisers, their ads dropped from his show. They had no idea that he was saying these types of things, and they didn't want their products or services associated with it. Additionally, Clear Channel Communications, the owner of KOA and the owner of most of the larger talk radio stations in the Denver market, agreed to let a representative of the Muslim community, Taj Ashaheed, not only have airtime on progressive talk show host Jay Marvin a couple of weeks ago, but then last night they had agreed to let him have a guest spot on the Gunny Bob show.
Wow.
Where he discussed a variety of things related to how Americans perceive Muslims, the threat from radical Islamists and things related to that. Unfortunately, we don't see any indication that Clear Channel is going to take it much further than that. Our point all along, or our goal all along, is that there needs to be a real public conversation about this type of behavior on the air, because it's not only Newman. Hosts like Peter Boyles on KHOW in Denver frequently engage in the same type of speech, as do his guests. Dan Kaplis on KHOW, another conservative talk show host, frequently uses factual misinformation to support his points of view. There needs to be a conversation about whether that's acceptable and why, and how it needs to change between Clear Channel and the public. What they've done so far is a good start, but if they don't go any further than that, it's really just throwing everybody a bone.
Well, I've been to your website, coloradomediamatters.org, and I've seen several times where news reporters, either through accident or on purpose, have misrepresented information, and you guys have written them letters, very polite letters, or made statements, and they have to retract them. And some of those people that you mentioned just then, Kaplis, Rosen, Newman, often are on your top 10.
Alarming frequency.
Yeah, and so it seems like if they're simply mistaken, that's one thing, but it seems to me there's a pattern of distortion that goes on repeatedly, and that's basically you're making sure that the public, which has their interest in having their news commentators present the truth and not distortions, you kind of hold them to the responsible side of reporting. And one of the things you said, Bob Newman has a responsibility as a reporter or as a news commentator. It's not just opinion, it's the public airwaves, and that's part of our rights as citizens. It's not strictly just his show. When he gets on there, he does have a standard of decency and truthfulness that he has to adhere to.
Well, that's absolutely right. I mean, a lot of the backlash from the conservative community about things like the Imus incident and some of the work we do here in Colorado is that we and groups like us try to muzzle people like Newman. And that's absolutely not the case. And we make it very clear that we believe that discourse needs to be conducted based on certain principles, not that there are hard and fast rules for these things, but there are some things that the public clearly does not want to see, and that's the use of lies to support points of view and the use of slurs on the air in order to promote somebody's opinions.
Got it. Now, one other thing, you mentioned a number of hosts on the show, or on airwaves, and locally we have one, well now two, progressive talkers.
That's right, yours truly.
But Jay Marvin is the local, I guess, progressive voice. And so let's just say prior to my show you have, and I'm not even on very often, but he's one voice, and then so counterbalance that, you have Jay Marvin on the so-called left, and you have Kaplis,
right,
Rosen, Gunny Bob Newman, Boyles,
John Caldara
on Saturday. He's up against me on Saturdays.
Well, not only that, but frequently he will guest host other conservative talk shows.
Yes,
so,
I've heard him on Mike Rosen's show.
Exactly. He guest hosted that the other day.
Does Schulteis have a show?
I pray that he doesn't,
okay.
But he appears with some frequency as well. I'm sure he does down in the Colorado Springs area where he represents the district. But it's pretty much stacked on the way to the conservative side, which mirrors the way the picture is nationally, too.
So you have, just locally, you have one person versus about 6 conservative talkers, and then if you add in the national talkers as well, Sean Hannity, Rush Limbaugh,
Bill O'Reilly, Michael Savage,
Mike Medved,
right? You name it, and they pepper the airwaves. So,
so AM 760 has 4 people on,
right?
You know, Jay Marvin, Tom Hartman, Ed Schultz, Randy Rose, and then Ghost of the Night. They have, so that's about 5 people, and then you have, just locally, you have 6 local people, then you have 7 or 8 national figures. So there is kind of, you know where I'm going with this.
Oh, sure.
There is a natural tendency for there to be more conservative talkers. Now, is that free market, or is that something else?
Well, first of all, let me say this isn't an area that we really focus our research on, but there is a lot of research that's been done on this. For example, so my opinions on that will be based on what I've seen in my experience just as a journalist over 20 years. What we've seen is that increasing consolidation of media ownership has had an effect on the variety and the diversity of formats and voices that you see on the radio airwaves,
right.
and that's undeniable. The question is how does that change? If by trying to change that, are you going against what these companies have determined their audiences want to see and hear? I don't know that there has been a credible amount of scholarship done that says there are 9 conservative talk radio shows for every 1 progressive talk radio show, because that's what advertisers and listeners have said they want. This is the result of decisions that have been made by corporate owners rather than decisions made from the bottom up. I mean, when's the last time you saw KOA say, well, the listeners asked for this on the radio, and so we're changing our programming to suit that. I imagine that happens sometimes in some markets on some stations. I would also say fairly confidently that that type of thing would be rare. You look at the formats of radio stations that are successful and they don't change very much. And you look at the numbers of their audiences and they tend to be relatively small in terms of standards of the market. I saw some figures the other day. I believe there's an outfit called Scarborough Research that tracks demographics of broadcast markets, and I believe the number, which was reported by Westward, the Denver Weekly, was along the lines of something like 75,000 people listening to the main drive time talk radio shows on a given weekday morning in Denver. Now, that's not very much.